Alright, so I think it's time to do a motor swap here on this Murray off-road mower I've had for a while. I've been running what's essentially the original engine. Actually, technically not original. It's the same style motor, but the original engine, I broke some of the studs off trying to take the head off to do some porting and polishing with the original block. So I actually purchased this block almost new for $10. The guy had bought it, put about 10 hours on the engine, and the connecting rod bolts came loose, so it needed a crankshaft and a connecting rod. And what I actually ended up doing was separately buying a brand new overhead valve connecting rod and piston and rings, obviously, and just putting all the OHV internals inside the flathead. Everything bolts up perfectly. And then I did port and polish the head on this one, which is you got to be careful when you do it on these flatheads. If you plane the head down too much and bring the surface of the head closer to the engine deck where the piston pops in and out and the valves come out, because the valves are in the block in these flatheads, you actually end up reducing some of your flow because the space actually closes up. So the head's actually been planed 0.1 of an inch. The intake has been ported and the exhaust has been ported. I shaved the eyebrow and ported the deck a little bit on the engine side, and obviously it's got the upgraded carburetor and the cold air intake, straight pipe exhaust, catch can, as you can see. Always run synthetic oil in it. Other than that, there's no real performance modifications that I've done to it that I can really think of, nothing crazy. But it runs really good. As you can see, there's no governor down in there whatsoever. We've been running governorless for, well, since last summer. I don't know if I ever mentioned that in any of my videos, because usually when you say stuff like that, people cringe and then bitch at you, so I kind of kept that one under the carpet. The new OHV motor that's going to go on here is also going to run ungoverned. So obviously one of the first things I need to do is strip all the accessories off of this engine. I got to get the carburetor, the intake. I'm going to take my emergency pull start. I got to unbolt this guy, drill new holes in the top cover of the OHV for the catch can. Obviously got to take all the wiring, which is fine because it's all plug and play. As you can see, the exhaust actually vents out of the opposite side on the flathead, and on the OHVs it comes out of this side, so I'm going to have to route the exhaust down and under and back because I want to keep my straight pipe set up. I will not compromise on that one bit. Alright, so a short time later, we've got this engine pretty much stripped of all the wiring. The carburetor, the exhaust is loose. I got my pull starter cup off the top, catch can, pretty much everything except for the bottom pulley up under here and the 4 mounting bolts that I have to go through from the bottom as well. Stuck all the parts over here temporarily until I get everything, put back in place and I can put all this stuff back on. Yeah, I just got to get this thing tipped up, take the pulley and the motor off, and do some cleanup, and we're ready to swap in that motor. It's sitting way out there in the driveway, currently drying. Now, considering that I drive this through mud and water all the time, I'm hoping this pulley just comes off. So far, so good. Ooh, good. Excellent. Now, normally I would take the belt off for this whole process, but I think what I'm going to do is just leave the pulley right here and just lift the motor right up off the pulley, and then deal with it after the fact, just so I can get this thing off of here quickly. No bolts, so the engine, she's fully loose. Nothing holding her in anymore. So we're going to go ahead and pull it off. I'm going to clean this engine plate chassis real well with the engine degreaser and get that pulley out of there. Maybe take some of the belt keepers off so it'll make putting the belt back on easier. And then swap on the new motor. I'll grab it from this side. Yes! So that's what we're left with. A nice, gunky, greasy, oily mess. I can get this pulley out of here. Oh, look at that! Love me a Murray chassis. Pulley can come right up through. Shit, I didn't even need to unbolt that thing. Well, actually, I guess I did because the belt's still there, but isn't that awesome? Oh, dude, look how friggin' nasty this is. Oh my god. That's what's like hiding deep underneath your motor. And don't tell me my crank seal is bad, because it's actually not. It's one of the few motors that hasn't had a crank seal leak that I've owned. I think even the OHV has a good crank seal, but this engine block was practically brand new when I put it on, so it should be alright. She's pretty much lined up in there. One thing that concerns me is how far this valve cover sticks out the front. I need to test fit my hood to make sure it still clears. Try closing it all the way. It's obviously not bolted in yet, but you can see inside the grill there the valve cover. It's probably about an inch away from the front of the hood. Yeah, it's really close. It just clears, which makes sense because I'm pretty sure they put overhead valves on these chassis, you know, as an optional thing for the bigger, higher end garden tractors. Either way, it fits. That's all that matters. I gotta get this thing bolted down. Get the pulley bolted up. Gotta change the oil on this guy. I got to put my pull start cup on the top, replace this seal here, which I've got a new one right over there on the bench, rig up an exhaust, wiring, carburetor, fuel, catch can. I might nix the catch can temporarily and just hook it up just to get it running. I can always add the catch can later fairly easily, and I think half the reason my old motor was sucking so much oil is because I think the rings were bad, which makes sense considering how bad I beat the shit out of this thing. So hopefully it doesn't happen with the new motor. I thought I had just overfilled the oil, but it was actually a little low and it was still spitting oil, so hopefully I did replace the PCV on that and it didn't work. So I'm hoping that this engine doesn't do the same thing. So I got the motor pretty much bolted back into place using 3 of the 4 original bolts. You can see them poking up there. This side, turns out this back one over here, right there, was actually stripped out and I couldn't get it to tighten, so I ended up using a nut and a bolt in the same location, which is probably better in the long run instead of trying to just thread through aluminum and hold it that way. It's now fully bolted down. That one's original. Now up under here, we got to do the pulley, put that thing back on. But before I do that, piece of advice for anyone who does anything with off-road lawnmowers, or off-road, anything for that matter, get yourself a can of this, or a bottle, whatever you want to call this, anti-seize. There's copper and there's silver. I think the copper is for steel on steel contact, and I think the silver works better for like aluminum or something like that. I might be mistaken, but it's something about the corrosion, the oxidation of the aluminum to the steel. I won't get into the scientifics of it because I really don't know, but smear that all over this 1-inch shaft before you put your pulley on, and you will thank yourself next time you go to remove that pulley. As a matter of fact, pretty much put this shit on anything that you don't need to put Loctite on. Loctite and anti-seize are 2 of my favorite chemicals to use on these things because it just makes disassembly a lot easier in most situations. Alright, pulley's bolted back into place, belt's on, engine's bolted down. So now I can actually focus my energy on getting some of the engine accessories put back into place. Like I said before, the exhaust comes out of this side, so I'm going to have to build a whole new exhaust. My original one from the flathead, this one used to actually set down in here and kind of bolt up, similar to that. Obviously the exhaust isn't over here on an OHV. This is an exhaust pipe, or the exhaust pipe that was on the lifted mudding mower. When I originally had that, it just bolted on like this and shot out the side like that. It was extremely freaking loud, like ear-piercing loud, just popping. And I kind of like that this one sort of sounds like a four-wheeler. I mean, obviously this thing's going to sound a lot different, even with the resonation chamber that's underneath here. You can see that, this guy right here, that's basically the exhaust resonator. And it gives it that thump 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 sound instead of pop pop pop. It gives it a nice deep tone. So I do want to retain that because I don't know, it'd be interesting to see how different the OHV sounds with the exact same exhaust setup. So we're getting some accessories hooked up. I got the pull cup, whatever you want to call it, the emergency pull start on there. And you can see, this is kind of a side note, but you can see the oversprays, like white overspray all over this engine cover. So I am going to repaint that at some point. I'll probably take it off to add the catch can, more than likely, in the future, the near future. So I'll paint it then. I replaced this seal that goes down in the bottom of the dipstick. Still got some wiring to do. This engine doesn't have the plugs, it's just cut wires. So I'll either cut the plugs off of my old motor and solder them in, or I'll just cut these and solder them together, which is probably the better idea, especially for waterproofing. I got some grounds to go up on there. There's a bunch of them actually, some of them are hidden down in there. The kill switch wire, that's got to get hooked up, but again, the wire is cut. So, got a lot of soldering to do, maybe some heat shrinking, stuff like that. I did top it off with oil, so that's good to go. I used a synthetic AMSOIL. Not that it really makes that much of a difference, but it's in there. Good for high revving motors. The PCV, it's kind of hooked up. You can see the hose is bent. It's not kinked, though it is close. I'll probably have to finagle that a little bit. Throttle cable is not hooked up. As you can see, a number of reasons why that's not there yet. The first being I need a new throttle return spring because my old one only came to like back here, so my old spring's not going to work, so I got to grab a new one. I'm sure I have one here on hand. I'm just running out of time. The choke is hooked up right there, functional. The 17 or 18, I don't even know what horsepower carb this is. Let's just call it the big bore carburetor is hooked up. That should be all set, ready to go. It worked good with the last motor. Actually, it ran a little rich on the last motor, as you can imagine. New throttle cable. I have to put that on, trim it to fit, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I feel like I made good progress today. I have to stop because I got to go pick up my kids, so I'm kind of out of time now. I was hoping to get this thing up and running by the end of the day, but I don't think that's going to happen with the exhaust and the accelerator pedal and the wiring that I got to do to get it going. That's going to be it for this episode. Feel free to let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. If you think the OHV swap is good or bad. I'm not disowning the flathead. I love me a flathead. There's like 8 or 9 moving parts in those motors, it seems like, and I've never had one really fail on me besides it physically blowing up. These OHVs, there's, more moving parts with the rocker arms and everything, but it's subways that actually makes the valve train a lot easier to service than on a flathead, believe me. But besides that, the next time you see me and see this thing, it should be up and running. We should be going for a test drive, so keep an eye out for that video. Thanks for watching, you guys, and I will see you next time.